Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 30 running back rankings for Week 11. You ready? The Fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas. All right, before we get started, let me remind you what to expect in our video. As I do my fantasy football research for the week, I like to make this video so it kind of reminds me what's going on. And if I can help me, then I might be able to help you. Let me remind you, these are not our rankings. I'm just reacting to many of the sports writers and the consensus picks for this week. And I hope some of the stats and trends I show you will help you with your own lineups. All right, before we get started, let me remind you the teams on buys this week are the Atlanta Falcons, the Indianapolis Colts, the New England Patriots, and the New Orleans Saints. All right, let's get started. At number 1, you got Christian McCaffrey versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Christian McCaffrey had 95 rushing yards and 47 receiving yards, so he was ranked 13. So you expect that to continue, especially as Brock Purdy's kind of getting better. At number 2, you got Austin Eckler at the Green Bay Packers. Austin Eckler had 67 rushing yards, 1 TD, and 48 receiving yards. He's just doing Austin Eckler type things. At number 3, you got Travis Etienne versus the Tennessee Titans. Hopefully this will be a ground game, but Etienne had 35 rushing yards. And that is not good. So before we move on from him, he's only surpassed 100 yards once this season, and he's got into the end zone. He's had 3 games with multiple TDs in a game. And I think that's why he's there, but it seems to be a stretch pick. At number 4, Josh Jacobs at the Miami Dolphins. Now, Josh Jacobs had 116 rushing yards, 11 receiving yards, and that was good for the 21st ranked running back. Still surprising me when I see that. If we look at what he's done, he's been in the top 10, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks out of 10 weeks. So we expect a little bit more for Josh Jacobs this season. He's not having an unbelievable season like he had in 2022. At number 5, Tony Pollard at the Carolina Panthers. Now, Tony Pollard didn't have to do too much. It seems like it was an air attack in Week 10, but he only had 55 rushing yards. We need more from Tony Pollard if you want to make a strong run at the end of your fantasy season or go far in the playoffs. At number 6, Saquon Barkley at the Washington Commanders. Now, Barkley had 66 rushing yards. He was ranked 34. That is not cutting it if you want to be ranked in the top 6. At number 7, Derrick Henry at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Derrick Henry had 24 rushing yards. Now, that is not cutting it. So if we look at what's he done on the season, well, he's only had 2 games over 100 yards, and he's only scored 4 times this season. He's not the Derrick Henry of late. Number 8, Breece Hall at the Buffalo Bills. Now, if you look at Breece Hall, he had 28 rushing yards, but 47 receiving yards, and that's what propelled him to do well. At number 9, you had Rachaad White at the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Rachaad White had a combined 98 yards and a TD, and that was good for 10th place. So, what can he do this week? So there's not a lot that this team does extraordinary well. It just seems to be average. And I think Rachaad White could do well if he gets most of the carries. At number 10, DeAndre Swift at the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be an interesting game. If you look at what Swift did, he did 74 total yards in Week 9. And I just think that if you want to win and do well, it just seems like this is what his chart looks like. It's kind of on the downward trend. And he scored 4 times. Maybe sometimes what hurts DeAndre Swift is that offense is too potent. At number 11, Joe Mixon at the Baltimore Ravens. Joe Mixon only had 46 rushing yards and 1 TD. And I think if you look here what Mixon's done on the season, he's only been in the top 10 once. So right now they got him ranked at 11. I think that's a stretch. At number 12, Kenneth Walker at the Los Angeles Rams. Kenneth Walker had a long catch for a touchdown, and I think that's what propelled him to be the 4th-ranked running back. Without that, it might have been slim pickings. At number 13, you got Aaron Jones versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Aaron Jones constantly gets ranked, and it seems to be a stretch in my opinion. Here, he had 35 rushing yards, 19 receiving yards. The team overall, you have one receiver with over 75 yards, one running back with barely 70 yards. And I think that offense needs to step up, or it's going to be tough if anybody picked up a Green Bay Packer this season. At number 14, Raheem Mostert versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Miami Dolphins were on bye, so if you go back, he had 85 rushing yards and a TD. I think what's going to hurt Miami is you got too many good running backs. You had Wilson come on, you have Ahmed, and now you got Akon coming back as well. So too many running backs in Miami. At number 15, James Conner at the Houston Texans. Conner is going to be benefited by having Kyler Murray come back. It seems like that aerial attack can improve, but now it's going to be who's getting the ball. You can't just focus in on the running back or stack the line. So you have 73 rushing yards, good for 32. At number 16, you have David Montgomery versus the Chicago Bears. Now here, David Montgomery did well. He was the 5th-ranked running back in Week 10. He did that with 116 rushing yards and a TD. I've been saying this. It just doesn't seem like too many key players can be listed. But you got Amon-Ra St. Brown was in the top. You got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery both succeeded. So you have three key players in the top ranked. So maybe I'm wrong. At number 17, Devon Akon versus the Las Vegas Raiders. And if he's coming back, he's been out for a while. So if he comes back, now you got too many people to feed. But if he gets the ball, I don't know if it's going to be as good as those 3 weeks right there in that season, in the week 3 to 5. Number 18, Brian Robinson Jr. versus the New York Giants. Now, Robinson was the 3rd-ranked running back in Week 10. But look at that, 6 catches for 119 yards and a TD. I don't think he's going to do that again this week. And if you're doing 4.8 yards per carry and only 8 attempts, you're looking at maybe 40 yards. So pay attention to that. At number 19, Javonte Williams versus the Minnesota Vikings. Now, he had a good game, 79 rushing yards, 31 receiving yards. He was the 7th-ranked running back. But if you look at him overall in the season, what he ended up ranking, he's been in the top 10 2 of the weeks. And to see him rank so high, it's a stretch. At number 20, James Cook versus the New York Jets. James Cook in Week 10 had 109 rushing yards and 11 receiving yards. And if you want to look at what he's trending, maybe he's picking it back up. If he does another good week this week, it means he's trending up. So pay attention. But that offense is hurting. They need to do much better. At 21, Isaiah Pacheco versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Eagles have one of the best defenses in the league. Now you got Pacheco going against the Eagles. I don't expect much from Pacheco there unless he can get into get some receiving yards. But that's what it looks like. And I going against that Philadelphia Eagles defense is tough. At 22, Darrell Henderson Jr. versus the Seattle Seahawks. What did Henderson do in Week 10? Well, he might have been on bye. So go back to Week 9, 19 rushes, 16 receiving yards. The week before that is about 85 total yards. So to see him ranked high, again, is a stretch. Now, 23, Najee Harris at the Cleveland Browns. Harris had a very good game. He had those type of games that he can have. He just doesn't have too many of them. I don't know why they can't give him the ball. But you got Jaylen Warren and you got Najee Harris did well in Week 10. At number 24, Jerome Ford versus Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, you got Chubb coming back. Now you're going to split the carries. And now you're going to have 2 running backs in the top 30. Pay attention to that because I just don't see. And you got Kareem Hunt in the mix. So let's just drop Kareem Hunt, Jerome Ford, Deshaun Watson trying to prove himself. So I don't know. At 25, Jahmyr Gibbs versus the Chicago Bears. Now, both the running backs did really well in Week 10. Jahmyr Gibbs was the number 1 running back. Will that continue? I guess he doesn't have to do much to be in the top 30. So I expect him to be a little bit higher. At 26, Gus Edwards versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Gus Edwards did have a TD, but he only had 28 total yards. We expect more from Gus Edwards on that Baltimore Ravens. Number 27, Chuba Hubbard versus the Dallas Cowboys. Chuba Hubbard, he's getting ranked, but it seems to be a stretch. At 28, you got Dameon Pierce versus the Arizona Cardinals, and he didn't do much. And then we're going to go to 29. Jaylen Warren had a good game versus the Cleveland Browns. He had 101 rushing yards and a TD. And lastly, at 30, you had Deontay Foreman at the Detroit Lions. Foreman had a good game, 80 rushing yards, 1 TD, and 12 receiving yards. That is your top 30 running backs from Week 11. Before we go, let me just figure out and show you the top picks for Week 10, the results. And I like to show you guys this stat. Here is the results for your running backs. You have any standouts, pretty even. Bijan Robinson, he's on bye, so pay attention to that. You got 23, Ty Chandler. And then you got, I'm not going to say it's Jusukik. So you have this guy from San Francisco. He popped in there. And Latavius Murray and Rico Dawdle. So those are a couple key points. I got to learn these people's names a little bit better. But that is the top 30 running back rankings for Week 11. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and good luck this week.
Those fantasy good fellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
Those fantasy good fellas.